Hey guys, how are you? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing a review of a horror film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2012, directed by Rob Zombie, and this film is called The Lords of Salem. And the story to The Lords of Salem is as follows. The Lords of Salem tells the tale of Heidi, a radio station DJ living in Salem, Massachusetts, who receives a wooden box containing a mysterious vinyl record. As Heidi listens to the record, it starts to play backwards, and she unwittingly unleashes a coven of 300-year-old witches who were imprisoned and tortured during the Salem witch trials. Is Heidi going mad, or are the Lords of Salem returning for revenge? So the movie starts off in Massachusetts, Salem, and Heidi is the main character. Now, the movie opens up 300 years previous, and it documents the fate of the Salem witches. Now, the Salem witch trials, basically a group of women were condemned as witches, and they were burnt at the stake. So the movie sets off there, it gives you an insight into the backstory, and then it fast forwards 300 years later, and Heidi is the main character. She is a woman who has just come off drugs, and she has got her life back on track. She's a very popular DJ radio host, and the station one evening gets delivered a very mysterious package by someone who claims to be the Lords. That's all the Return to Sender has on it, is the Lords. So Heidi is very curious as to what this package is all about. She opens it up, and there is a wooden box containing a very mysterious vinyl record. So she sees this as an opportunity to play it on her radio show. It's a very mysterious quality. She doesn't know what to expect, but she wants to share it with everybody. Once she plays it, she realizes that it has a very mysterious and captivating tune to it, a very haunting, creepy sound of music. And so she has no idea what it's all about, but very soon she becomes obsessed with this music, and it causes her to go on a deep spiral of darkness, and she goes into a very hellish descent into hallucinations that cause her to question her own sanity. So whether or not it's her sanity or it has something to do with what happened 300 years earlier, that's something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Lords of Salem. I'm a massive fan of Rob Zombie, and I love his other films, and although I didn't love this film, I still think it was very memorable based on the fact that it's a very visual film. Now, that does have positives and negatives, but I will say the positives are it's a very surreal film, and it's a very, very uncomfortable feeling the movie has. And I've said it time and time again in my previous reviews, that's everything you want in a horror film, something that makes you feel genuinely uncomfortable. And that's exactly what The Lords of Salem will do. It's a very satanic sort of movie, it's a very blasphemous film. And I am a Christian, and I can see a lot of people being offended by this, but for me, I was offended by what was happening, but that was the reason why I liked it, is the fact that it wasn't scared to go that extra step. So that quality of the film I actually really liked, is the fact that it was blasphemous. It was making no apologies for offending the viewer. And that's something Rob Zombie is really well known for, is that he makes stuff that is deeply unsettling, and it's basically showing a filmmaker who is not making films to appeal to the masses. He's making films to appeal to his specific band of fans. And that is something that is very admirable, and that's why I like Rob Zombie. Unfortunately, this movie, it goes a little bit too far as provoking the audience, but it has a lot of qualities that are likable as well. It's a very colourful film. It's a very nightmarish feeling to it. There's some very extreme aspects of the film that make it, hardcore horror fans only. If you're a die-hard Christian and you hate anything that questions religion, then you're not going to like this film. That is the controversy surrounding the movie. But for me, what I was taken on was a really uncomfortable ride, and for that part I enjoyed it for what it was. But as I said, unfortunately the movie doesn't quite grab you as other Rob Zombie horror films do, like House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects. They strike you in very colourful, deeply unsettling characters, but they are characters that you can somewhat relate to. I mean, they have likeable qualities, but it's very strange because they are the most barbaric people imaginable. But it's their characters that felt very colourful, that made you want to see what the background to these characters were. So in those films, it was the characters. In the Halloween remakes, it was all about making a slasher more, a three-dimensional. Instead of just a one-dimensional sort of slasher mindless killing machine, Michael Myers was made into a three-dimensional character, a realistic character. So that's what I really liked about those movies. But with this movie, it is very stylish, but it just doesn't have that X factor that grabs you. It is a very shallow film. I was surprised to see is that it had grounds to be a very memorable movie in the Salem witch trials. The start of the movie starts off very promising, then it goes into flashbacks of what happened to these witches, and I just felt like there was ingredients there to make a really memorable experience, but it wasn't fully utilized. I just felt that Rob Zombie got too far ahead of himself as far as provoking the audience, and it was a case of provoking it for the sake of provoking. It was more concerned about making a Christian really angry at it than it was at generating a very interesting film, a very interesting story. Because apart from the visuals, it just doesn't have much going for it. I saw Heidi, played by Sherry Moon Zombie, Rob Zombie's wife. I don't think she's a terrible actress, but she just didn't portray a very memorable character. In other films of Rob Zombie, you got Sid Haig and Bill Moseley, who did great jobs at the villains, and they were interesting characters. You wanted to know more. But with Heidi, you couldn't invest your time in her, and as a result of that, it's more of just a collection of blasphemous scenes that when they gel together, it doesn't feel like an experience. It just feels like a mixtape of someone who likes Satan, who likes to worship Satan, and he's just put it together to provoke a response. So basically, it's a collection of scenes, one scene as blasphemous as the next, and after a while, it starts to get a little bit repetitive. It starts to get stale, and you start to think, yeah, Rob, you're more concerned here about being rebellious than you are about making a film that has a little bit more depth to it. So I thought that it was a missed opportunity with the Lords of Salem, but I will say that there are some scenes that really stick in the mind. There are some scenes that make you feel very uncomfortable, but by the halfway stage, after you're getting all of these blasphemous scenes that are unrelenting, you're basically just a scene after scene after scene after scene of just really uncomfortable material. It's good to start with, but once it starts getting a little bit, overused, you think to yourself, well, this is not in moderation. It's becoming clear the sole purpose of the film is to provoke and make people angry, and Rob has kind of lost the focus on the actual story. And that to me was the biggest downfall of the film. But I will say the visuals are very, very good. The soundtrack is good, but unfortunately, as far as characters are concerned and as far as the actual story, it was just basically following a woman who is on a hellish descent, and it's just one scene after the other of blasphemy. And in the end, what you get is a film that it tries to be more rebellious than it is memorable. So that was my biggest criticism of Lords of Salem. I think this is his worst film, but having said that, it does have qualities that I would recommend. I thought it was very, very well made. Rob Zombie is a very good director, but I thought he just dropped the ball a little bit with this one, and he was more concerned about being bad than like a bad boy, rather than someone who was making a film for the intention of making a good story instead of someone just wanting to upset people. So overall, for the Lords of Salem, I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. 2.5 because I thought, considering the material that he had, it probably should have been a lot better than it actually was. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.